Hello world and welcome to my Git and GitHub tutorial. As the title of this video suggests, this tutorial is for absolute beginners to Git and GitHub. However, you should be familiar with a little bit of programming or software development. So let's get started. So what is Git? Git is basically a version control system created by Linus Torvalds, who is also the developer of the Linux kernel. If you are any kind of software developer, then you should totally be using Git because of various reasons. So number one, to keep track of changes in your code. So if you're developing a software project, any kind of software project, let's say an app or a website or any kind of thing for your own personal project or maybe your company, you want to keep track of all the changes in your code because undoing it is simply not an easy option. You know, when you want to go back to a previous version, like let's say you added a new feature which broke some of the code and you want to just go back to an older version which worked, so you can use Git for that. Or you can also keep multiple backups of your code in a very efficient manner rather than just duplicating your project folder, which will obviously take up a lot of storage and is pretty inefficient. You can use Git to keep multiple copies of your code. Thirdly, you can work on these software projects with other team members. So if you want to collaborate on a software project, let's say if you have a project to work on in college, then ideally you might be emailing your code to one another or maybe giving it on a pen drive to your fellow teammates. But that's a pretty ineffective and a silly kind of archaic solution. So Git is much more efficient in terms of that, in terms of helping with project collaboration. And finally, all these add up to being an efficient software developer. So without Git, you are probably working in a very inefficient manner without using Git or maybe another alternative version control system. So it's very useful once you get the hang of it. I personally, when I started off with it, I was a bit confused with how to use Git and how it works and all the terminologies and everything, and didn't really find any easy tutorial for that. So, which is why I'm making this tutorial, because after learning GitHub and Git, I became very efficient with it, and now I probably can't not use it. I have to use it in every single project, every single software project that I do. Um, so without further ado, let's get started. So first we'll go on github.com, which is basically the hosting site for GitHub repositories. So you'll need to create an account over here. It's totally free. And once you log in with it, this will be your home page. So I'll just quickly show you what a repository looks like and what a user's profile looks like. So I'll just go to my profile over here. Here's my profile with just some information and everything. If I go into the repository section, here are all the repositories. So repositories are basically like projects. So any kind of new project that you make, you might want to create a new repository for it. So here's the example of a repository, which is Hello World. It's just a kind of basic repository that I created. So as you can see, this is the name of the repository. This is just a little description, some tags, 22 commits. So commit is basically a kind of change in your code which you then sort of save. So it's a sort of milestone, you could say, in terms of your progress of your code. So I've made 22 commits, which is basically like around 22 changes, you could say. So if I just click this option, I can see my entire history of all the different things that I've done in this code. So I deleted this file and I updated this and I created this and stuff like that. And I can just go back in time to any of those versions. So branches are a little bit more advanced, which I will cover in another video if the need be. Um, Contributors are basically all the different contributors that have helped on this project. This one is just me, but maybe there might be more in the future. And if you click this, you can see all the different languages that your project has used: HTML, Java, C++, etc. So this is my main code over here that's visible. Uh, Here are all the different files, and here's a little README. A README file is basically a sort of default, you know, README file, as the name suggests. It's just like an information or description page of the repository or project. Okay. So let's get started by creating a new repository. So as I said earlier, a repository is basically like a project. So let's say you want to create any new Android app, or you want to make a new website or any Python script or something like that, you can create a new repository for that project. So I just click the plus button, click new repository, and I get taken to this page. So here you can add your repository name. I will write something like YouTube tutorial. You can name this whatever your project is. You can add a little description. This is a tutorial on Git and GitHub. Uh, then I can choose to keep my repository public or private. So public will basically mean that it's publicly visible. It's by default on a view only mode for other people. So other people can view your code, they can download it, and they can, you know, mess around with it as much as they want on their own computer. It obviously won't affect your version. Uh, However, keep in mind that you shouldn't, even by mistake, upload any kind of personal or important document like any sort of passwords or anything if it's a public repository, because then anyone can see it, even if you say think you've deleted it, because it can always be tracked back in the previous version of a previous commit. So you can either keep it public, which also means open source, by the way, or you can choose to keep it private. So this repository, I'll keep it public. And these last three options are options which people usually tend to skip, but I suggest you don't skip that. So initialize this repository with a README. So yes, you want to initialize it with a README, like try and do this each and every single time, because it'll help your repository be more discoverable and people understand what your project really does. Over here in this file, you can maybe add something like what how to build your app, or how to deploy it, or maybe some tips on contributing or something like that. Add git ignore. So git ignore is basically a sort of file which will ignore certain kind of files from in your project being uploaded to GitHub. So what does that mean exactly? So let's say if you work with Java, you know that to run a Java file, you will have to compile it first. And in order to compile it, you run Java C and will create that dot class file. Now the dot class file is basically only your related to only your machine. Like you don't want to upload that file to GitHub because it's sort of like a temporary cache kind of a file, right? So you can just simply add the git ignore file of this, and that particular those kind of files, basically the dot class files, or maybe in Android Studio like the APK files or something like that. These kind of temporary garbage kind of files will not be uploaded to GitHub. So it's basically a sort of blacklist kind of thing. So if you see here, there are several different templates available. There's one for Android, there's one for C++, C, and there are a ton of different kind of templates which are already available on GitHub. So I'm just going to type something like Java. So it's just going to create a Java file. A Java git ignore file, which will already have some typical Java files and folders ignored or blacklisted. So depending on the kind of project you're working on, you should add that specific git ignore file. Add license, I generally go with the MIT license. This is basically for open source repositories. You can view more information here. Uh, it basically just allows other people to, do anything with your source code. So yeah, so once I've got these details set up, I'm going to hit create repository. And here my repository has been created. As you can see, this is the name over here. This is the little description that I had added. You can add some tags if you want. And here are my different code files which have been created automatically. As you know, I set up these options at the end, like I created a README file and the license, and also added the Java git ignore. So if you see, if you click this git ignore file, you'll see here there are some predefined files and folders which are blacklisted. As you can see, the .class file, so all .class files have been blacklisted. .log files, and these kind of files will not be uploaded from my computer. Um, So if you go back and if you see readme.md, so this is just the readme file. It's in a file type known as MD, which is Markdown, which is basically nice for formatting or making a readme file look good. So like as you can see, this is a bit bold and it's like a title, and then there's this little line over here and a little description of that. So this is what a basic repository will look like. There are some other buttons over here. Watch, to just get some notifications of changes. Star, so you can star other people's repositories or they can star your repositories, which is basically sort of like bookmarking or favoriting or liking it. Fork basically means to duplicate the entire repository into your own account. So basically if you say stumble upon some cool repository of someone else, someone else's really nice project, and you want to sort of modify that, you think you can make it better, you can tweak it to your liking. So what you can do is you can fork it and it will make a complete copy of that other person's repository into your own account. So then you can modify it on your own account as much as you would like. And you can also send your modifications back to the original repository, which is known as a pull request. That's a little bit more advanced, so I may not cover it in this video. Issues are, you can just file like bug reports of some features or something like that over here. And these are the other options are just, not that important. So as you see over here, this part is a little bit important. One commit. So commit basically means like every single time when you add a new feature or fix a bug or something like that, you make a commit. So commit will basically save that instance of your code in that particular point in time. So you can sort of go back to that previous point in time. Like let's just say you are working on an app and you add a new feature, but that new feature breaks the whole code. Now without GitHub, it'll be really difficult to undo that feature addition and go back to the previous working version of your app. But with GitHub, you can simply just commit all the buggy kind of code in a separate commit, and you can just roll back to a previous stable version of your code. So you can see the entire history over here. Right now, I only have one commit, which is my initial commit. So I will get to that in a bit once I create some new commits. Branches are similar to creating forks of your own repository. It's again a bit more advanced, so I won't cover it here. Contributor just shows that there's only one contributor, which is me. So if other people are also helping you on the same project, which is the collaboration aspect of GitHub, it'll show up over here. So that's the basic GitHub repo page. So now I'm gonna actually modify this code and start working on the code on my own computer. So in order to do that, here I'm gonna use GitHub Desktop, which is this app released by GitHub themselves. It's available for Mac and Windows, and you can just download it and set it up on your computer. I'll have a link below, but I won't really show how to do that because they'll have a tutorial on their own web page. So once you just install GitHub and set it up and everything, you can click File and Clone Repository. So Clone Repository will basically download or clone your repository from the cloud or from the server or github.com basically onto your local machine. So here I can just filter and just type in tutorial. So here's that repository which I just created, and I can just choose a place to save it. I'm just going to leave it here itself, and I'm going to click clone. So it's going to clone that entire repository or download it basically on my computer. So as you see here, it's my current repository. Here are just some options. Current branch is master, which again I will get to maybe in the next tutorial or something. Thumbs up if you want to see that. But it's basically a little bit more advanced. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as it is. And I'm just going to click show and finder so you can see for yourself that this is downloaded in my computer. And here are the two files. The gitignore file is also here. It's just hidden. So now let's just open up our code editor and start coding and maybe create a kind of file like that. So I'm going to open up Atom, which is my text editor. You can use Sublime Text, VS Code, Notepad, whatever you want. And I'm going to just add that project folder right here. in development, and GitHub, here's where I saved it, YouTube tutorial. So I'm just going to open that, and it's going to show me all my files here, my license file, uh, which was automatically generated, as well as the README file. So basically you can treat this README as a sort of code file for now, since it's basically just a text file like your Java files, your Python files, your C++ files, HTML, whatever. So let's edit this file. I'm gonna just capitalize these letters and just make it look neat. So let's keep that, and let's Command S and save it. So now it's saved, and as you can see here, if you've noticed, it became yellow because Atom just kind of highlights changes. Like, it just shows me that I've changed this file. And how does it know that I've changed it? Because of Git. So if I go back in my GitHub Desktop app now, right here it shows me that I've changed this exact portion of the code, or of the text basically, from underscores to now capitalized. So it shows me that I've edited this exact portion of this particular README file right here. And now I can commit this and push it to github.com. So right now all these changes are only on my computer, only on my personal laptop. But if I go into but if I commit and push this code on github.com, it will be publicly visible by everyone because I've made the repository public, of course. And also it'll be accessible by other collaborators and whatnot. So so in order to kind of upload this code, you're going to have to do two steps. Number one is to commit it, and to commit it you're going to have to type a commit message each and every single time. So this commit message should basically it's sort of like your own little personal note as to what kind of changes you've made. So I'm just going to write here capitalized title. So I kind of know when I look back at this that, yeah, this is when I capitalized the title. So you can click commit to master, and this next step is push to origin, which will actually upload the file through the internet. So the difference between commit and push is basically commit just kind of saves your changes in a, you could say, a separate folder, and push will actually upload the files through the internet. So it obviously depends on your internet speed. However, commit will just happen in a second because it just kind of duplicates the files. So now if I go back in Chrome on github.com in the repository page, and if I refresh this, you'll notice that this just changed right here. It just became capital, just as I did. It says, yeah, 37 seconds ago, I capitalized title, almost of capitalized title. So you can see that the README file, the description has changed from initial commit, now it's become capitalized title 37 seconds ago. And all this has changed over here, meaning it has successfully been uploaded. So you can see over here 2 commits, it says now. Before it was showing 1 commit, so now if I click 2 commits, I can see my 2 commits, which were the initial commit and then capitalized title, which I just did. So if I click on this browse repository at this point in history, I can actually go back in time and see exactly how my repository looked at that before I made the capitalized title thing. So here you can see readme.md still says initial commit, and the title is still not capitalized. It's still the old kind of title. So again, if I go back in my entire commit section, and let's just go back to my repository, here you can see I've got 2 commits and it's all capitalized and everything. So this was basically me making changes on my local machine to that particular file, and then uploading that file through the internet onto github.com, which is sort of similar like uploading a file to Google Drive, except that it's much more powerful, and it's really made to work with code. So now, like, let's just say I edit this file on github.com. Let's say I'll just write a little thing. Oh yeah, editing this on github.com. And now let's just commit that change. Let's leave it as default updated readme and commit changes. Notice how here we don't have to push because obviously we're doing it on github.com itself, so you can't upload anything. So now once that commit has been made, if I go over here in my repository, it shows now 3 commits. So here are my 3 commits: initial commit, capitalized title, and updated readme. So if I go onto GitHub Desktop, and if I click fetch origin now, uh, you'll see how it says pull origin 1. That means 1 commit. So it's not actually changed it yet. Right now it's just still the old kind of version. But now if I click pull origin, it will instantly get the new version from GitHub. So as you can see here, this has been added. So that is basically how this thing works. It's basically like it's sort of like a Google Drive kind of thing, you could say, but it's really built for code because of the points that I told you guys earlier, which is that it maintains a full proper history of all of your code and all of your changes, as well as allows you to go back to any of those previous commits. So you can say work or you can work on some kind of feature or work on the code with a peace of mind. So you won't be scared that like, okay, will this break the code, or like what if I have to undo it, or what if my laptop gets busted and my code gets deleted. It's basically a really good peace of mind because nothing will really cause a loss of your work. So that is basically just the very very basic stuff of GitHub, of Git and GitHub. By the way, I forgot to mention the difference between Git and GitHub. Basically, Git is, you could say, is the technology, or you could think of it as a programming language, whereas GitHub can be thought of as the IDE for that programming language. So Git is basically just that technology which can be used by multiple sites, multiple places, and GitHub is just one of the many different websites which host Git repositories. There's also Bitbucket, there's also GitLab, which works in similar ways by pushing and pulling and committing and etc. So that is basically the very basic stuff of GitHub. I know I say basic a lot. But if you like this video, if you found this helpful, if you think that this is a good first step into what could possibly be a series of GitHub tutorials, then just let me know in the comments and give this video a like. If you guys want more tutorials, more in-depth coverage, then just let me know below, and I'll definitely try and make some more videos. So thanks a lot for watching, and peace out.